good evening, and welcome to this special Island Stat Sports Talk. I'm your host, Earl Beast, and joining me this evening to talk about long term athlete development planning is none other than Jenny Smack from the Bermuda Olympic Association, Jacon Edness from the Ministry of Youth and Sport. Is that correct?
You're close, but we could keep
Okay.
going.
All that other stuff. You
Youth
can leave it on the
culture and
doorstep.
sport. Youth culture and
Sport is the
sport.
most important thing for me. And of course, Couture Horton, parent chief, also from the Bermuda Olympic Association. Jacon, let's jump right into it because this has been something that you guys have been working on for a while. The long-term athlete development plan. Can you tell us a bit about, give us some background on it and why it hasn't come to the fore at this time?
All right. As we all know, in Bermuda, we have had sparks of brilliance. Um, I've been lucky to be associated with some of that spark of brilliance through decent governance and administration, but I don't think it was really planning. So, long-term athlete development speaks to various stages of development from grassroots right up to international competition. Ensures that there's a pathway for that child starting with an active start, going all the way up to active for life. So that's when we hit our middle age and we're still trying to remain active within the sport. What we do have a lot in Bermuda and overseas is that, a lot of sports don't have a pathway from grassroots right up to active for life. And then what happens? There's no retention. So the sport ends up going through peaks and valleys. What long-term athlete development does is, it stabilizes the sport. It organizes the sport. You stop looking at that child that comes to your grassroots program. You start looking at them as a potential Bermuda athlete, and you put those mechanisms in place for that child. And hey, maybe that child's not a Bermuda athlete, but you still have to have a pathway to keep that child involved in the sport right up until you get to our age. So that's just a breakdown of layman's terms of
Mm,
the.
yeah. Let me come over to I'll start off with Couture from the Bermuda Olympic Association. This is something that the Bermuda Olympic Association has supported. And just prior to coming on, you said it's something that the Bermuda Olympic Association is in need of as well to track athletes as well. So tell us a bit about how the information that the government is trying to collect helps or assists the Bermuda Olympic Association.
Yeah, so what's funny, Earl. So first of all, thanks for having us. I feel like I'm a regular on your show now. I'd be
Yes.
collecting a check. But um, but we actually we came to this sort of parallel spot with the government. Sort of, it was funny because we did a long-term athlete development workshop. Jacon will remember in 2019, so pre-pandemic. So at the same time, concurrently in a parallel universe, the government was also crafting the national sports plan, and this was a huge part of their planning process. So we were really glad to be able to hop on board and support them in that way. The way that and I've said this before in your show, the way that the Bermuda Olympic Association has had to adjust um, is because we now have youth events under our umbrella. So we have the Youth Commonwealth Games, we have the Junior Pan Am Games, we have the Caribbean Games, which is a new games, and we've got the Youth Olympic Games. So all of these come under our umbrella. So talent identification and planning for an athlete, from even just from learning to play all the way up to learning to train, which is all of our junior athletes, to learning to win, which is our senior athletes. All of these things are in the long-term athlete development plans. I know that it's really exciting for us to sit here and celebrate our Olympians and celebrate our Pan Am Game medalists and all of these guys, but I mean, going from childhood all the way through to elite is a good 10 to 12-year process. So you're not just, as Jakan said, we get an 8-year-old in a sport, they either become elite athletes or they become athletes for life. So when they are 65, we still want them to be involved in sport, whether that's at the elite level, in masters, or if that's, just staying active. So the Bermuda Olympic Association, from a junior elite athlete standpoint all the way through to a senior elite athlete standpoint, are very, very interested in the entire process.
Mm.
And we've got some funding that's based off of the government's plan.
Sure, sure. Jenny, welcome.
Thank
Talk a bit about how important it is for athletes and parents to understand the necessity of having information documented not only by the BOA but also by the government, so that they can track how youngsters are progressing.
Sure. Thanks, Earl. I'm really passionate about this process, and I'll talk about the 2 I's right now as a starting point, which are information and input. A lot of this discussion in airspace is, can veer toward elite athletes, but it's also about information for parents and athletes to know about the funding options, about the pathways, the possibilities as to what's out there. And it's fragmented right now. It's piecemeal. Parents are going to the sources that their connections and doing their best. But wouldn't it be nice if it was all located in a central place where we know the various funding options, as Keturah mentioned, that we do have a junior grant option for youth athletes for any number of NSGBs. And we want numerous recommendations for those funding, right? But where's that information? Who knows about it? The second I is about input. And we get the best outcome in a number of different scenarios when more of us contribute, when there are diverse opinions. We don't have to agree, but we do need to start the conversation. And it's my understanding that, let's just say, the reach in terms of the input for these planned and the plan development has been quite narrow to date. And what we're trying to do is create awareness and ask members of various sporting bodies to ask the question of their executive: where are they in the planning process? How can I help? This isn't about being critical. By no means, far from it. This is about those who have experience, those who've walked the journey, those who care about the journey, those who have young ones. Let's contribute and let's be part of the solution, not just for individual sport, but Bermuda as a whole. This is about, I think the span is 3 to 5 years, Jakan, correct me if I'm wrong, but what we do in these next 3 to 5 years positions us for many festivals to come. And also, as Keturah said, the well-being of our country as far as athletics and sports.
Yeah. Jakan, let me ask, because we know in other circles, you don't always get a lot of buy-in from the NSGBs, and there's a lot of pushing and pulling and tugging and so forth. How has this been received by the NSGBs?
Generally positive. We started a partnership with Sport for Life that commenced February 2023. So we're into a year of it now. We have Tom Jones and Richard Ray of Sport for Life. They just recently left the island in November 23. Out of the 25 NSGBs, they met with 17. The 17, obviously, they're at varying degrees of completion and progress, but progress nonetheless. Some are just starting, some are almost finished, and others are in between. But at the end of the day, we at the department, we challenged our NSGBs, and we're only here for a very short time, and sometimes people's time in sport is very short, whether they be volunteering or administrating or coaching. So we challenged them and said, what do you want your legacy for your sport be? You're not president or vice president or secretary forever. What do you want your legacy for your sport to be? because it's bigger than all of us. And also at the department, we would like to align ourselves with NSGBs that are catering to all walks of life in our community, serving our community, and very organized and ready to accept the funding that government is willing to offer, and also accept the children and athletes that are coming through their organization.
Mm. But when working along with the two gentlemen you mentioned, what kind of sparked your interest in picking what they do to help Bermuda's sports and sporting bodies to grow?
Yeah, it's a lot of research, and as Katora said, this research began, and our first steps into LTD was actually in 2019. Obviously, funding was cut due to COVID, and we couldn't really entertain it at the time. But with the national sports policy, that gave us some teeth to really say, okay, we need this funding because this is a policy objective. This will help sport, and at this point, some NSGBs are apprehensive, and that's fine because people are apprehensive when it comes to change. But at the end of the day, with this small country and small talent pool that we have to maximize this talent pool, and we maximize this talent pool with organization.
Mm-hmm. And Katura, when we look at the standpoint of the Bermuda Olympic Association, you said back in 2019 you guys had a forum of sorts, and this was a major topic. How were they receptive back then? As now we see Jacon saying that they're kind of opened the door up a little bit. Some have not yet, but the door is open.
You know what? We would like to hope that we were instrumental in their sort of introduction to the concept. We signed on with Sport for Life Canada as well, and had a host of workshops. And, it was sort of an introductory peek, I guess, into what Canada has done throughout its sports. And I think people were mostly open, Jenny. I think so. I think what I love about Bermuda and Bermudians is that for the most part, we want what's good for our kids, our athletes, the fabric of our country. And what we were hoping to do through, you asked Jacon why Sport for Life. As he said, this is new science, and it's probably not all that new, but it's new to us. So, it's tried, tested, and true. And we know that it works in other jurisdictions. So we're hoping that it works here. And it'll just be completely Bermudianized. So at the end of the day, I think people do want the best for us, for our kids, for our sporting fabric. And again, we're just really grateful that the government is pushing this, and we want to support them and support the NSGBs through the exercise of getting to the point where they're planning and talent identifying kids to go all the way through to all of our teams.
Sure. And Jenny, let me take you back to when you would have been competing. How something of this nature, how would it have assisted you, your family, and even the people you competed with in Bermuda, striving for goals, striving to qualify for Olympics, striving for whatever the goal was? How would this have assisted you back in the day?
Sure. There are several phases, I think, as Katura and Jacon have talked about, right? And so learn to swim, and at the base of what you call the life cycle or even the pyramid, imagine if, I think we have for children aged 5 to 12, we have close to 5,000 youth, right? We estimate that only maybe a half, being very optimistic, have the opportunity to learn to swim, right? And so even if you go back that far, imagine the diversity in the pool. Imagine the increase in the number of swimmers in the clubs. And imagine I think there could have been more competing at every level all the way to elite, which makes us stronger. We know when there's more competition, we rise. So even just that. And then I'll jump to the end of the life cycle where we know more now. Sport for Life has been at this actually since the 80s. There's lots of data, there's lots of indicators, and there's a focus on transition out of sport. And that would have been really, really helpful for myself and for others. I struggled with the word normal, still struggle with it actually, but it's, there are competencies, there's services, there's support in terms of transitioning into the workplace. That would have made life much easier and probably could have benefited from that. So those are just two examples. The other is a pillar of coaching development. Sport for Life and also Swimming Canada has a competency model for coaches development. The beauty of this, where Sport for Life is that much of it's developed. So let's just tweak it so that it can be used in our model, right? We don't have to offer everything. We don't have to offer all of the coaching courses. And I submit that there's cross-sport opportunities. And so that's what I'd like to see. So that's a long answer to what I could have benefited from, but also based on my experience where I see the opportunities.
And Jakan Couture alluded that there's documents and so forth, and the word Bermuda making the I guess the forms kind of to suit Bermuda and Bermudians and the like. How long did that process take to fine tune some of the wording? Because in sports generally it always makes the same sense, but some wording for Bermuda changes a little bit when you're doing up a document. So what was the process in making sure that once this document was put out for the NSGBs and the athletes and parents and so forth was completely looked at and understood that it's tailor-made for the local athletes?
Yeah, so each NSGB is responsible for their own LTAD. We put the mechanisms in place to ensure that they are educated, they are well informed in regards to developing their LTAD. Also, we provided them, as Jenny said, we're not asking them to reinvent the wheel. So any sport that's a recognized national sport governing body, more times than not, if there is an LTAD for that sport already completed. So it's about just researching, looking to see what Netball Canada did for the sport, and trying to develop and implement a plan on the island. As previously stated, there have been some amazing things happen in this country in regards to sport. And us at the department, and I'm sure at the BOA, would like to see organization come to the forefront so that there's not just sparks of brilliance, but brilliance consistently.
Yeah. Jenny, I'm going to jump back to you. I heard you mention earlier a junior grant is on offer. Take us through that process, because there's more out there for our athletes today than like ever before.
Yeah, there is. Between Jakan's team and BOA, the BOA and does have funding. It's no secret. There's complete transparency, and we're trying to promote. That's one of the reasons we're here. We get or we've enjoyed or benefited from Pan Am Sports donating a certain amount of funds. It's in the range of $75,000 to $100,000 each year, and the only ask of NSGBs is that they put forward athlete recommendations. That's all we ask, and we struggle. We've had NSGBs who have elected not to make recommendations. So we want to talk about this, and we want parents to know and ask. A key part of it is a training plan. We do ask for a training plan. So we are asking NSGBs and coaches to think about what an athlete needs, to capture it, to talk about and discuss that longer term view. but we're just even happy to start with some names, recommendations, and some rationale. And we want to support. And part of our mandate and what we're committed to is looking at the data, right? It's all well and good to talk about money, to talk about recommendations. We're looking for a significant percentage of those youth that we identify, and the age range is 14 to 18, competing in our youth festival meets, roughly, depends, varies a little bit based on sport, but roughly. So those conversations need to take place at age 11 and 12. That's when these NSGBs should be having these conversations. And we're looking for those numbers to get higher and higher in terms of retention. So ultimately, it's a lofty goal, but wouldn't it be great for 100% of those athletes we identify at the youth level are retained all the way through to senior festival meets? Right now, we're losing a number for various reasons. And we're trying to understand why and have that conversation. So there's funding available, but it's also about the narrative and understanding what's happening so that we can undergird the existing programming. And full circle back to these long-term athlete development plans, because that's where Jacon's going to get information. Jacon and his team is going to get critical information. Let's not submit what is. Let's submit content in terms of elevating and getting to the next level all around.
Sure.
You know
Katura,
what
I saw the expression in your face when Jenny mentioned that some NSGBs are not submitting documentation for their own young people that they're working hard behind the scenes for, which is a bit disappointing. I mean, and we have this conversation all the time, but why do you think it gets to that point where they're not helping their athlete to actually grow in the sport?
So you know what, Earl, I'm not gonna be pessimistic about this. And I'm going to hope that a lot of it is just ignorance of what's out there. I think that, just as with any organizations, folks struggle with communication from the BOA to the NSGB, then the NSGB to a parent or an athlete. So strengthening those communication ties is great, which is really why, Jenny and I are so passionate about talking about this, because it should not be a secret. It should not be shrouded in confusion as to how you can apply for junior funding. I know that the government generously gives junior grants to their youth athletes as well, who they're able to see rise and thrive throughout and they have more sports. They deal with more sports than we do at the Olympic Association. So, this is something, as Jenny said, if an NSGB has already done long-term athlete development planning for their NSGB and for their athletes, when a parent or an athlete or anybody, an NSGB, sees a funding opportunity come available, it shouldn't take weeks and months to pull together a file. They should just pluck it out of their file, say, this is the training plan for this athlete, and off we go. And we can write to Pan Am Sport and say, we need $10,000 for this athlete. Give it to us, off we go. And to Jenny's point, this has been, the Bermuda Olympic Association has been cutting its teeth with youth athletes since the Youth Olympic Games in Pune, which was, goodness, forever ago. Patty Petty was the chef de mission. But you will see that your Olympians in 2024, your Olympic hopefuls in 2024, are your youth Olympians from Nanjing 2014. So this is a decade long of them planning and staying the course. If you look back at those 7 athletes that we took to Nanjing, one of them is already an Olympian. 3 of them are still vying for Olympic spots, and the others seem to be athletic. So, they're staying the course, and we've got folk in sport. So, I mean, this is just such a huge undertaking. And again, just so much gratitude for the government for taking this and running with it, for Jacon's team. But also, we just want everybody to know that this is a way forward for those kids who are in sport and not really knowing how they can get better.
Mm. Jakan, the national sports policy is quite a bit, and you have different, I guess, phases of it. But this one here is vital because it actually gives the younger athlete an opportunity to springboard a career or yeah, a career, a lot earlier than normal. So when you guys were devising the plan to put this all in place, was this one of the things that was in the back of your mind, that would help a youngster, no matter what sport it would be, that gives them a springboard into what the sport is like off island?
Well, um, to answer your question, the reason why, speaking for myself, the reason why I'm so passionate about this job, in another life, I was actually an elite cricketer.
Mm,
But I was the beneficiary of decent administration, where the administrator had the foresight to select myself and a few others and send us to school, send us to various academies with the view of us representing Bermuda at senior level.
mm,
Um, so my main passion is to ensure that there's even more opportunities for the next batch of athletes, um, to excel in their sport. And through the department, we offer the National Junior Athlete Sponsorship Program. That is an initiative that has seen 75% of recipients end up to go on to represent Bermuda at senior level. We are very transparent with how we fund, why we fund, who we fund. There's no secrets over here. At the end of the day, we're trying to increase the levels of accountability with the government dollar. So the policy plays a big role in getting the department funding, and also Director Bean and Minister Darrell, who play a role in that as well. But at the end of the day, the funding has to be used in a way that we see results, us at the department. The days of the word grant are over, because a grant is figured that, okay, it's a grant. I'll just get the same grant next year. I don't have to do much with it.
mm,
We changed the term to investment. We are investing in your sport, but we need to see results from it. If you ask for $10,000 to put on a coaching course, we need to know that there's 10 new level 2 certified coaches in your sport, because at the end of the day, that ends up benefiting the community. So it's very important that NSGBs buy in, and for the most part, we have buy in, and we will focus on those NSGBs who have bought into it, because we cannot we fight for the funding, so the funding has to be used. I don't like, as Katora said, leaving money on the table, because in government we fight against education, public transport, health, police, you name it. We have to fight for that same government dollar. So we like to tell the story for sport that there's some positive things happening with this government funding. Can we get some more? And again, we will align ourselves with those organizations who are helping us tell the story.
mm. And I make a point of what you said, where close to 75% of the athletes that received the National Junior Sponsorship Awards have gone on to represent Bermuda at the senior level. That bodes well for the ministry and the government itself, that they saw an opportunity to invest in the future of Bermuda sports and allow athletes to venture off, get back for coaching, or bring coaches to Bermuda. We
Hmm.
see that more often now, that NSGBs are bringing coaches to Bermuda, where more athletes benefit as opposed to one athlete traveling.
Yes.
Is that something that you guys kind of encourage as well, to ensure that the volume is far greater than just one?
Yeah. So COVID forced that change, because at the time, once we were coming out of it, there was still restrictions. Events were on, they were not on.
Mm,
So there was a lot of uncertainty. So we said, let's allow them to bring in a coach to work with a cohort. Um, There are some good examples of the funding used. So, for example, Triathlon Association in the past, they will use national junior funding to bring in a coach to specifically work with their athletes that are getting ready to go to Carifta.
Hmm.
So that's, that makes sense. You bring in a coach, you're working with the athletes getting Carifta, and then you do Valley Carifta. So that we can tell a story with that. And there are instances where just a single athlete is chosen for the sport, and that's fine. For example, Cody Rigo is chosen for equestrian, and he's doing amazing things over in
Hmm.
America. So both instances can work for the department.
Mm. And Jenny, from the standpoint of the BOA, Katora pointed out earlier about the Youth Olympics, Junior Pan Ams, and the like. Um, Having an opportunity to be around youngsters from a younger age to start to make that to have that dream of getting to the Olympics for the BOA. How important is it that you guys show that support to the athlete, to the NSGB, to the family of the athlete, that and you show other people's journey.
Yeah, it's absolutely critical, and we get back to ensuring that people are informed, parents and athletes, that they know the pathway. Many think that it happens later, and then when it's too late, right?
Hmm.
It's critical that this development happens ages 11 and 12 for most sports, sometime even younger. And it's not about one line of rhetoric or one point of view. Maybe you really don't want to overpromise. You don't want to set unrealistic expectations. I actually believe in the inverse. I think it's important to introduce what's possible, what the pathways are, and let the athletes know how to get there. Let them have conversations. Many of the parents weren't athletes themselves, so they don't know. They're just turning over stones, trying to get as much information as possible. Take the Youth Commonwealth Games this past summer, or well, I guess in 2023 now.
Hmm.
But many of those athletes didn't even know what the Youth Commonwealth Games was, right? And
Hmm.
so that was an avenue, right? And so let alone preparation, the dress rehearsal of what it takes to prepare for a major meet. Us as coaches and as organizing bodies, how do we position our athletes to perform well? So it is a conversation with the athletes, but it's also a conversation with coaches and parents and national sports governing bodies. Hey, this isn't about criticizing national sports governing bodies. This is about, we're here to help. Here are the resources. Invite input, invite the help of your parents to form subcommittees and provide input to kind of strengthen and broaden the plan.
Sure, sure. And Katora, for you looking at it, the opportunities that are out there, where should people again be looking to obtain this type of information? Should they be going to the coach? Should they be going to the NSGB? Should they be contacting the department? Should they contact the BOA? Where should they be looking to get information? I mean, there's probably one or two parents already listening to this saying, okay, that's the question I wanted to ask. Where do I get the information?
So that's the thing. That's the beauty of the government's initiative, that this is actually, it empowers the NSGBs to have all the answers, and because they are developing their own plan. So
Hmm.
and just as Jenny said, if they are to invite the input of athletes, of parents, of coaches who are out there hands on with these kids, then that's what the plan should reflect. It should reflect that they have sourced input from people who are actually doing it and people who have been there, along with people who are in the weeds right now. So they should be able to go to their NSGBs. Barring that, the Olympic Association is very transparent with what it offers, and that's on the website now. And we were never very good at the website, but now the website is populated with all of the opportunities that are available for our athletes. And you know what? when you know better, you do better, Earl. And we're sort of at a point where we've all got to work together. As Jakan said, this is not, we're not looking for lucky glimmers of sparks of excellence. We're looking for sustained Bermudian sporting excellence over time. And that just doesn't happen overnight. So identifying those opportunities and then providing them to those kids, or not even just kids, but athletes as they grow through their careers into retirement, is just really important overall with strengthening sport in Bermuda.
Sure. Jenny, I'm going to come back to you because it's important to find this out. For Pan Am Sports funding, is there an age requirement?
Yeah. So they have to be eligible, and there are some there's further detail. I'm not going to be able to go through all of it, but in a nutshell, it's funding for those who are preparing for youth festivals. So the age is 14 to 18, right? And so you're looking at developing for when they're eligible for it. So, feel free to reach out to the BOA, look on the website for that criteria. But the NSGBs have the information. It's been sent to the NSGBs. They have that information. So, if you've got an athlete who aspires, and kind of in many, it's CARIFTA, who are active in CARIFTA, it's reasonable to start to ask those questions as a simple rule of thumb. Yeah, it sounds young, but if you think about, some of our swimmers who are 21, 22, 12 isn't, you're 8-10 years out.
Yeah.
And if I can hop on that a little bit, Earl, too.
Sure.
When we think of so coming up, just for specifics, we've got Paris Olympics. The Junior Pan Am Games is in 2025. The Youth Olympic Games is in 2026. Our next Olympics is only 2 years later. So, these quadrennials, I know it seems like the days drag on, but the years go quickly. So it is really imperative that we're able to identify athletes and bring them through these cycles, because you blink and you've sort of missed the sweet spot. So really, really important that we allow these kids to get their feet wet. And, when Jenny and I, and Jakan too, Jakan was one heck of an athlete. So I don't know why he's acting like he is just, he captained the heck out of the team. But, when I think of the fact that Jenny and I, we were thrown to the wolves as kids. So, you're a kid in the big leagues at a Pan Am Games, just hoping you're not drowning in the pool. Whereas these kids are able to compete at a youth level, where everybody's this is their first major international multi-sport event. They're in uniforms. They're mixing with people from other countries. They're learning different languages. This is the stuff that we want them to have, that really just captures them in sport and keeps them going through. And again, I'd love to reiterate that when you know better, you do better. So we're not trying to throw kids or throw athletes to the wolves. We want them to get their feet wet early, so that this is something that they love over time. And then it's not just their parents' dream that they go to the Olympics, it's theirs. So they start working towards that, and they're driving their own careers and their own lives.
And I think, Katura and I are kind of tag teaming this, but I think it's really also important to underscore the different pathways, right? So there's a pathway to elite athlete, but there's also pathways for life. We're talking about Division 1, 2, and 3 college experience, college scholarships. Athletes who may not ordinarily be able to pay for or afford college have the opportunity not only for education, but for camaraderie and immediate group of social support, right? So when I think about the opportunity to start the pathway at youth learning, sport, play, learn to swim, learn to whatever, we're talking about a better Bermuda through educational opportunities, through self-esteem, through, addressing some of our social challenges. So this is a big deal beyond elite athletes, and why it's so important to get this information out there.
Jakan, I heard you mention Director Bean and Minister Darrell. what have been those conversations like amongst yourselves regarding the national sports policy itself? Because although we're talking about the athlete development planning, the policy itself, how has that been accepted amongst the sporting community?
Sorry, you broke up a little on my screen. I'm not sure about any others. Can you just repeat it real
Okay.
quick?
I was asking, you mentioned Director Bean and Minister Darrell, and I'm asking about
Yes.
the national sports policy itself. Although we're here discussing the athlete
Yes.
development plan, but the policy itself, how has that been, accepted around the sporting community in Bermuda?
Oh, actually, that was accepted very much, very, very well. I think what a lot of people enjoyed about it is that it was a simple read. It wasn't wordy, but most importantly, it was realistic. At the time we were writing it, I think Flora had just won her gold medal, so it was a lot of um, bandwagoners coming around, and we could have easily filled to pressure and said, okay, let's create the next Flora. That's our main objective. But you can build a house without a good foundation. So we wanted to ensure that this policy was a good foundation for us to springboard into more things. The main objective was um, increasing participation, but also the LTAD is what we're discussing. Another aspect that we met was the initiative where we partner with the NSC to allow national athletes and teams to train at the facility 2 months prior to international competition. In the past, people had 2 weeks free, but as you know, as athletes, 2 weeks, you're 2 weeks out, you're not doing much. You're tapered off, you're resting, recovering, you're trying to remain sharp. But 2 months now, you could really get some serious training done. And athletes wasn't using the facility because they couldn't afford it, or NSGBs wasn't using the facility because they couldn't afford it. So that initiative, getting that off the ground, was very good. It helped a lot of NSGBs. Football have used it. The initiative, Wushu have used it. A number of NSGBs have used that initiative. So now we're here at LTAD plan, which is number 5. We started a year ago. We hope to finish next month. I don't anticipate all 25 having their plan done, and that's fine. I would take 10 to 15. That's a start. That's a start, and then we can just continue to work with those, as we go along. But as the train's moving, the train is moving, and it's either you want to put your sport on the train and move with us, or get left behind. That's just the reality of it.
I know that some time ago you guys had that conversation with the NSGBs about other things, and you guys have your yearly meeting with them about getting on board for various other things. What time frame are you looking at for them to get on board? Because it's their athletes that are losing out.
Yeah, I mean, in some instances, and again, some NSGBs do better than others, and our goal here at the department is to close the gap. Is to close the gap between the big sports and the small sports, and the higher funded sports and the lesser funded sports. Funding or how much people do your sport doesn't have anything to do with organization. So if you're organized, the funding and athletes and opportunities will come. But for me as a public officer, I can't put myself on the line with giving money to an organization, and I know they're not organized to deal with it.
Right.
So it's a lot of different variables that come into play, but yeah, you have to keep pushing.
Couture, you mentioned 2025. We know the Olympics is in 2024 this year, but the youth is in 2025. Just what is, I mean, there's so many things out there available for an athlete that's knocking on that door for 2025 for this year to get funding to help them progress and advance and qualify for 2025. Give me your message to a parent, to an athlete, and to the NSGB, pleading to look out for that athlete, to give them whatever chance possible that they can make those games in 2025.
So be ready now. We've already actually done the funding, the first wave of funding for the 2025 and 2026.
Mm-hmm.
We've got another wave. It's coming. It comes every year. So, if there's a kid who is going to be between 15 and 18, and for some sports, looking at cycling, at triathlon, that during the pandemic were extended to 23, was it, Jenny? 23. We're going to look at those, and if they're eligible, they are eligible for funding. For Youth Olympics, they are a hard in between 14 and 18 for those games, and they're in Senegal in 2026. So when we're looking at those kids who are nationality eligible and age eligible to represent Bermuda at those events, we are looking to fund them. We're looking to assist them with their budget. Youth sports is not now, nor has it ever been cheap. So, when NSGBs do not put their athletes forward for funding, it only hurts athletes and parents, because at the end of the day, these parents are funding their children's careers. So if there is an opportunity for us to offset some of that financial burden, we want to do that. So as Jenny said, every year we get about anywhere from 75 to 100 grand. And we carefully distribute this money over some time to athletes who we think are going to make those teams. So parents should pay attention, athletes should pay attention, but perhaps most importantly, NSGBs should have their fingers on the pulse so that they're ready to forward those applications when the BOA calls. Because as Jenny said, as we've all said, this is, if they've already planned, this is not a huge undertaking. So if they, by the end of next month, is it next month, Jacon? By the end of next month, are ready to support to submit their LTAD plan, they shouldn't have any issues with furnishing us with the information that we require in order to give their athletes funding.
Wow. Jenny, any closing remarks?
Yeah, I think just 2 points. Reiterate and encourage parents, athletes to ask the questions on the status of this plan of their NSGBs, offer to help. It is really critical. It's about a month. Is that correct, Jacon? We have about a month left on this year. We're near the tail end. And I think also it's important to underscore, and Jacon, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is as you guys look at the collective of these plans, we're looking to make the best use of our dollar, our government dollar. So if we see synergies, if we've got commonality across our sports, let's leverage that. But the only way Jacon and his team can know that is if it's in the plan and when we look across these plans. So, we know swimming and gymnastics are foundation sports for all sports. So that's just one example. There may be others, as Jacon mentioned, with coaching. So there's overlap. I'd bet that there's overlap, and let's look for that and leverage it.
Any parting words, Jacon?
All right, let me get myself together. But the main thing is what we would say is I haven't seen a house built yet without plants. You know what I'm saying? So we can't keep moving on like this. The main thing what we stress as well to the NSGB is that this LTAD plan acts as the business plan for your sport.
Yeah.
You know, so instead of relying on government, you can now go to the corporate sector, lay down that document, and say, okay, here's our, can you help us with the active start? Can you help us with learn to train stage? You understand? Here's what it entails. Do you see yourself wanting to be a part of it? You understand? So it's all about sustainability in sports for us. As you know, we are voluntary in regards to about majority of the administrators are voluntary, and we have one or two persons doing majority of the work per sport in some instances. And usually, what happens is once that one or two person decide to leave, the sport takes a nosedive.
Mm.
In any period of transition, the sport takes a nosedive. But if they have this plan in front of them, it doesn't matter who's in charge. They have a blueprint to work with. So again, for us as the department is ensuring that sport is organized and sustainable for the citizens of Bermuda.
Mm. Important parent chief? No?
I mean, yeah, it's I love having the last word, Earl. No, but again, I mean, it's all been said. I think this is for sport, and as Jakan said, I mean, Jenny is volunteering. I volunteer. We spend an inordinate amount of time ensuring that our athletes have the absolute best chance to reach their dreams, whether that is to make a Carifta team or if that's to make an Olympic team. So at the end of the day, as Jakan said, as Jenny said, if we, fail to plan, you're planning to fail. So it's really, really important that everybody gets these plans in. Jakan's expecting 10. Jenny and I are expecting 25. So
I said 10 to 15.
10 to 15. 10 to
we're expecting all of them because we have 26 national governing bodies. We're expecting for those guys to get their plans in so that we can knock on. So we know that they're working hard on this because we're working hard on it. So we can't wait to see them. And again, kudos to the government for the initiative, and we love supporting in any way that we can.
All right. Well, I want to thank the three of you for joining us this evening, talking about the long-term athlete development planning, something that is very, very important for our athletes and families as well, as many of you have indicated. Is not just about going to the Olympics. You can get an education. You can. There's so many things out there that are available once the door is open. And again, that foundation that Jakan is talking about to build the house, that's just it. NSGBs, again, if they need help, they can contact another NSGB. They can contact somebody else to help them out. But let's get this filled out for.
Or they can just Google the said sport and put LGAD behind it, and a whole document will show up.
Yeah, Jakan, we want good quality. Come on, Jakan. Paste, not copy and paste.
It's information. It's information. Well, I say that to say it's information. It's accessible information out there.
Sure. Now, folks, thank you very much for joining this evening. Jakan, we'll get back at probably sometime in March to see what the response was. Did you meet that 10 to 15, or did you get that 25? And then what's next for our young athletes? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Enjoy your night.
Appreciate it.